Within hours, a vital frontline settlement in eastern Ukraine became a charred graveyard for heavy armor. Dozens of tanks and armored vehicles lie smoldering, neutralized by mines and precision missiles and low-cost drones. The rate of attrition spiked so rapidly that both commands struggled to evacuate and secure their mounting casualties. Operational combat footage leaking online reveals a highly disturbing tactical shift. We see infantry locked in brutal close-quarters room clearing, while weaponized drone swarms penetrate windows and trenches like guided munitions. A single tactical objective changed hands twice in under a week. Each time a new flag was raised, massed artillery strikes immediately obliterated it. Multi-million-dollar armor, heavy vehicles engineered to survive indirect fire, and high-speed assault cycles were all committed to this sector. Yet the decisive weapon was a commercial racing drone carrying an explosive charge piloted by a young operator stationed miles behind the lines. This engagement forces a critical question onto every modern general staff. Have 100-ton tanks become vulnerable targets in a conflict where a $2,000 drone can neutralize them instantly? Join me as we analyze this operation to understand how it reshapes the future of modern warfare. The opposing forces initiated their offensive with a concentrated armored column directing columns of armor and infantry carriers straight toward the settlement. This bold maneuver guaranteed a high-intensity battle from the opening minutes. The assault force dispersed into tactical combat teams to execute a multi-axis attack, with tanks spearheading the push by pounding defensive fortifications with heavy fire, followed closely by infantry carriers. This coordination allowed the main gun line to suppress enemy fire support, enabling the mechanized forces to rapidly deploy infantry onto the objective without losing momentum. Tank crews maintained suppressive fire against hardened bunkers and obstacles. This sustained bombardment forced the defenders into defilade, allowing the transport vehicles to cross the open danger areas. The point vehicle struck an improvised explosive device, but its heavy armor absorbed the shock, maintaining forward drive while the dismounts prepared to deploy. Despite taking light anti-tank fire, the rest of the column maintained speed, successfully delivering assault teams to their designated disembarkation zones. As the assault intensified, commanders coordinated reconnaissance drones to locate enemy positions, while ground units provided organic suppressive fire, integrating grenade launchers to maintain pressure. Tanks repositioned to screen against any potential defensive counterattacks. This combined arms fire effectively fixed the defenders in place. The defending garrison attempted to hold with heavy machine guns and anti-tank missiles, but the overwhelming coordination saturated their defensive capacity. Direct tank fire systematically dismantled defensive obstacles and ruined cover. This structural destruction allowed the armored carriers to advance rapidly through sectors now devoid of protective cover. Overhead aerial reconnaissance drones guided the armor around minefields, leveraging this technical advantage to maintain velocity across highly contested terrain. Combat documentation captures the precise moments when the assault vehicles took direct hits from defense drones and precision missiles. These detonations illustrate how vulnerable modern armored platforms remain within built-up tactical sectors. One recording shows an infantry carrier taking a drone strike on its flank, igniting a fire that the crew quickly suppressed before resuming their advance, keeping the tactical unit fully operational. Guided missiles launched from concealed positions, disabling the running gear of several vehicles, forcing crew-level repairs under fire. Most elements adapted, deploying smoke to screen their displacement. Visual evidence confirmed extensive battle damage to hull plating, proving that despite attrition, the momentum of the push breached the outer defensive belt. Accurate battle damage assessment remains unavailable. However, the imagery indicates multiple vehicles were neutralized, yet the operational momentum persisted. Under heavy indirect fire and constant aerial surveillance, defenders faced severe tactical pressure, evacuating their casualties before conducting a fighting withdrawal to secondary lines. This retrograde movement was targeted by forward observers, but disciplined maneuvering allowed the units to slip away intact. Tank units targeted key withdrawal routes to prevent defensive consolidation. This final application of force secured the sector for the advancing echelon. Direct fire from the infantry cut off remaining routes, leaving the objective completely isolated and primed for consolidation. In this opening assault phase, the question is whether tanks still serve as viable breakthrough tools or if they have become easy prey for FPV drones. Once the defenders were pushed out, Russian troops quickly converted the captured village into a fortified strongpoint. This transition represents a critical operational pivot, shifting the momentum from rapid offense to active structured defense. Infantry immediately dismounted their carriers upon reaching the village outskirts, dispersing into tight tactical squads to secure the ruined structures scattered across the sector. Units swept rapidly through shattered structures, neutralizing lingering threats while establishing observation posts with clear fields of fire. A squad seized a damaged church tower to secure key high ground. layering sandbags around the windows to fortify their firing positions while minimizing exposure to enemy counters. Assault elements cleared debris from the narrow streets to establish tactical roadblocks, utilizing collapsed masonry as obstacles to channel enemy forces straight into pre-registered kill zones. The sector was entirely devoid of civilians. These abandoned structures provided ideal concealment for supply caches, allowing the occupying force to focus entirely on defense optimization without civilian complications. Once the perimeter stabilized, troops excavated fresh defensive trenches along the surrounding tree line, integrating them with existing artillery craters to establish a continuous interconnected network. Engineers reinforced a basement beneath a collapsed structure, shoring up the failing ceiling with heavy timber, converting the subterranean space into a tactical command post complete with radio arrays and planning maps. Barricades of rubble and brick rose, reinforced with metal scrap to seal off potential flank routes for the enemy. This rapid fortification converted the sector into a formidable strongpoint, with troops organizing structured guard rotations to maintain total security. Heavy weapons were positioned on rooftops, maximizing their engagement range over the high ground where counterattacks could materialize. This defensive posture was engineered to delay any rapid enemy advance. To declare complete territorial dominance, the Russian flag was raised over the tallest surviving roof. This calculated gesture serves to bolster troop morale while projecting strength to adversary surveillance assets. Perimeter patrols scouted for structural vulnerabilities, adapting physical obstacles using real-time tactical data from handheld systems. To bolster security, early warning measures were deployed, including tripwires wired to illumination flares across key avenues of approach to expose hostile nocturnal intruders. Simultaneously, Russian reconnaissance drones maintained constant overwatch, scanning the terrain for enemy assembly areas while executing precision munition drops on target opportunities. Pilots controlled these platforms from mobile command vehicles, positioned off-site routing telemetry to tactical commanders to adjust operations in real time. A drone flew low over the adjacent woodland, detecting fresh tracks that indicated an enemy retrograde and relaying telemetry to prevent a flank attack. These airborne assets effectively suppressed hostile consolidation efforts, constantly patrolling approach lanes to keep enemy reconnaissance elements pinned under cover. Continuous aerial surveillance established a persistent layer of security over the stronghold, integrating high-tech assets with infantry operations to solidify their hold. Yet only days after the Russian flag was raised, Ukrainian forces initiated a swift counteroffensive, deploying M113 armored personnel carriers, supported by additional armor, to retake and secure the contested settlement. Initiating the assault under heavy suppressive fire from distant support elements, the M113 carriers advanced rapidly despite intense artillery bombardment and active drone threats. Drivers utilized defilade and erratic paths to avoid direct enemy anti-armor fire, before braking hard at a designated dismount point where incoming fire was masked. Infantry quickly aggressed from rear ramps into tactical cover, rifles raised, while the carriers rapidly reversed to mitigate target vulnerability. Though peppered by shrapnel, 1M113 maintained suppressive machine gun fire against active enemy firing positions in the windows. This critical suppressive fire allowed the dismounting infantry crucial seconds to seek adequate cover. The armor established a brief protective screen, laying down heavy fires towards suspected hostile positions before withdrawing as the assault squads dispersed. Once on the ground, the infantry immediately organized into 4-man or 5-man tactical fire teams, conducting methodical room-by-room clearance through the ruined streets in a highly synchronized advance. Employing bounding overwatch tactics, they breached entry points and cleared rooms with rapid visual sweeps and coordinated verbal commands. Frags were lobbed ahead into dark basements where hidden threats might linger. To analyze this close fight, concussive blasts cleared stairwells before entry. Our team detected muffled enemy voices beneath a collapsed slab, taking a tactical pause to prep frag grenades, dropping them down the stairwell, and waiting for the smoke to clear before advancing. Suppressive rifle fire was maintained in short, controlled bursts to keep any hostile defenders pinned behind the heavy urban rubble. We deployed shoulder-fired rockets against the upper floors the moment heavy defensive resistance showed itself. These high-risk urban sweeps demanded constant non-verbal coordination through hand signals and silent whispers, maintaining strict operational spacing to prevent our squads from bunching up. Tactical movement grew deadly when our teams had to cross exposed kill zones between buildings, forcing troops to crawl low across the open terrain with zero cover except for blackened tree stumps and scattered masonry debris. Inbound machine gun rounds kicked up dirt inches from their boots during the crawl, dragging critical equipment while keeping weapons trained on suspect windows. A soldier froze as an enemy quadcopter buzzed overhead, rolling hard into a shallow shell crater a split second before the payload detonated feet away. showering him with shrapnel and soil, but leaving him functional to continue moving. Our support element established a heavy base of fire to suppress enemy positions, buying critical seconds for the assault squad to cross the final fatal gap to a crumbling wall. These high-speed maneuvers demand flawless timing and total trust. Any hesitation in the open invites immediate, lethal, direct fire. During our assault, the teams demonstrated highly disciplined maneuvering that kept casualties low, preferring to flank hostile strongpoints rather than conduct frontal assaults. Command elements issued rapid tactical adjustments, bypassing fortified structures while calling in targeted mortar fire to neutralize stubborn enemy pockets. Troops cross-leveled ammunition and medical kits on the run, keeping up pressure as they pushed through the ruins. As an officer reviewing this battlefield footage, we see our soldiers crawling low through the ash, clearing barriers and storming structures. Our analysis confirms that first-person view drones completely dominated the battle space during this clash. If you and I study this layout, we see these small quadcopters becoming the ultimate tools for tactical strike and area denial. The adversary deployed their aerial assets early to disrupt troop movements, intercepting infantry maneuvers and directing weaponized payloads into grouped soldiers before they could establish tactical dispersion. Enemy pilots controlled these systems from defilade positions, dynamically adjusting flight paths to target squads maneuvering through the rubble. We observed one hostile kamikaze unit target a tactical casualty evacuation vehicle, closing at high speed, but pilot error or electronic warfare caused it to veer off, detonating harmlessly in dirt. These drone strikes successfully scattered infantry formations while feeding real-time targeting coordinates directly to heavy artillery batteries for immediate devastating follow-up barrages. Forward observers used high-resolution video feeds to pinpoint occupied structures, directing heavy fires onto concrete structures with maximum efficiency and zero wasted ammunition. This sensor-to-shooter loop maintained constant friction, forcing defenders to displace and completely breaking their offensive tempo. Our units countered by deploying reconnaissance-configured drones to scout ahead, navigating dense tree lines and narrow alleys to map out hostile defensive nests before troops advanced. These quadcopters hovered low over trench lines, gathering vital intelligence on enemy combat status and weapon positions, enabling our commanders to formulate precise flanking maneuvers. We observed one tactical drone maneuver through a tight bunker entrance, detecting enemy movement inside and diving with an active payload, neutralizing the threat in a sudden kinetic detonation. These precision strikes target structural thresholds, collapsing overhead concrete lintels and burying hostile infantry under structural debris. Operators guided precision munitions directly toward fortified, elevated machine gun nests, detonating inches from weapon barrels and suppressing enemy suppression fires at key tactical moments. Battlespace telemetry clearly shows these weaponized platforms plunging directly toward targets, just feet from active infantry firelights, proving their precision in highly complex urban environments. In one instance, a hostile kamikaze asset closed on an exposed unit crossing an intersection, though its low terminal velocity allowed our troops to fall back to their armored transport before impact. Let's close with another strike, where our forces piloted a drone directly through a fortified structure's open window. Our breach charge ripped through the interior, instantly silencing all defending rifle fire. My pilots adjusted controls to evade anti-air bursts, looping back when initial runs failed. In defensive operations, we deployed tactical aerial scouts to monitor our entire perimeter, spotting any hostiles crawling through the shadows or testing physical barriers. Enemy drone flyers patrolled the perimeter, dropping fragmentation payloads on any shifting foliage while directing ground teams to flush them out. Our tactical drones scanned the rooftops for snipers diving directly into nests to neutralize targets before they could target our infantry. This contested airspace complicates ground maneuver. Every movement in the open becomes a deadly gamble against unseen hunters. Pilots engaged in a silent electronic duel, neutralizing threats with rapid evasive maneuvers or electronic jamming that forced immediate crashes. We must ask, can these cheap FPV drones permanently replace heavy artillery and attack helicopters? As our assault elements closed in, the enemy deployed fast response teams on tactical motorcycles across open fields, but our loitering munitions turned them into easy prey before they reached the perimeter. The riders pushed through rugged terrain, moving in fire teams utilizing microterrain and vegetation to minimize exposure to our remote observers. A lead motorcycle pushed forward heavily laden with critical ammunition resupply crates. But our hovering asset locked on from above, executing a kinetic strike that instantly destroyed the vehicle. The remaining hostile forces scattered, racing toward distant tree cover, but our pursuing drone fleet chased relentlessly, matching their speed and adjusting their dive profiles. Our operators analyzed real-time feeds, predicting enemy maneuvers based on rising dust signatures sending high explosive payloads to incinerate the target profiles. In modern warfare, this systematic pursuit guarantees a 0% survival rate, leaving nothing but smoking, twisted wreckage as a clear warning to others. Forward observers confirmed total destruction reporting via radio that the enemy's defensive line would receive no further reinforcements. Desperate to arrest our advance, the enemy command unleashed a massive Grad rocket strike across the entire grid, engulfing buildings and sacrificing their own troops in the process. Their rear echelon rocket batteries fired continuous high-volume salvos. We saw rockets arching across the sky, impacting in massive clusters that shook our command post. A heavy volley targeted the central square, still occupied by their own infantry. High-velocity shrapnel shredded the very structures that had shielded hostile machine gun nests. Opposing crews quickly reloaded under dense thermal smoke, refining their fire coordinates for another devastating barrage that turned the night sky bright orange. However, this indiscriminate fire destroyed the critical structures they relied on for cover, completely neutralizing their defensive advantages and leaving their lines in absolute ruin. The explosions leveled the remaining walls, once used as hostile sniper nests, burying fortified firing slits under heavy debris and completely exposing their defensive layout. A key fortified strongpoint took a direct hit and collapsed, sealing their subterranean supply caches and ending any chance of a prolonged defense. This tactical error reduced their fortified network to isolated pockets, forcing their surviving elements to abandon key strongholds in a disorganized retreat. The enemy leadership realized too late that their defensive scheme had failed, leaving their troops exposed to our rapidly advancing assault units. Their integrated defensive network was broken, shattered by their own frantic artillery, handing the tactical initiative directly to our forces. As the heavy bombardment subsided, our assault squads pushed deep into the ruins, finding only minimal hostile forces still capable of resisting. Our teams advanced with weapons raised. We bypassed deep blast craters, clearing dark alcoves where all signs of life had vanished. My lead fire team rounded a corner, capturing a dazed survivor who surrendered immediately after the artillery wiped out his entire squad. We swept through a row of ruined storefronts, discovering abandoned foxholes that indicated a rapid and chaotic withdrawal under pressure. I received sector-clear reports as our units established physical link-up, confirming that our systematic assault had completely broken all remaining enemy resistance. In the final phase, Ukrainian units secured the remaining prisoners, cleared the last pockets of resistance, and raised their colors over the objective. Assault teams detained dazed combatants emerging from cover, securing them for transport to the rear while medics triaged casualties. A final element deployed demolition charges into a suspect cellar where faint sounds were detected. The secondary blast confirmed that no further underground threats remained. National colors were raised over the command post, marking a hard-fought transition back to defensive control after days of dynamic attrition. This consolidation secured the sector with screening patrols pushing out to establish early warning zones along the horizon. We must analyze this decision. Did the Russians firing Grad rockets into friendly positions represent cold tactical necessity or a critical command failure? This single ruined street and a few destroyed hulls reveal an operational shift far larger than a localized engagement. It proves just how rapidly the doctrine of near-peer conflict is being rewritten. Low-cost unmanned aerial systems now dictate ground movement, allowing light infantry to shatter armored thrusts that once required full brigade-strength maneuvers. The engagement we just analyzed illustrates the wider operational picture. Rapid FPV strikes destroying heavy armor, while light cycles replace traditional armored carriers. And lethal close-quarters tactics that punish any maneuver force operating without local air reconnaissance. While these skirmishes appear minor on situational maps, they signal a profound evolution in modern global warfare. Battlefield dominance is no longer decided by heavy mass or firepower, but by superiority in sensors timing and execution under fire. This leads us directly to the strategic question we must now address. Is this engagement merely an isolated skirmish along a stagnant front, or a blueprint for a new paradigm where autonomous systems, electronic warfare, and agile assault teams achieve decisive victory in minutes? Future operations will depend entirely on which command structure adapts and who fails to evolve before the next tactical shock. What is your assessment of this engagement? Share your tactical views below. For further rigorous objective analysis of modern combat operations, be sure to subscribe to Military Force and follow our briefings.